So Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome all the devotees. So today is our special class on Bhagavad Gita. Normally on Saturdays we are reading for the English group the Sri Ishopanishad book. However, uh, we decided to do this topic of exploring the Gita, as I felt that this particular topic could be very important and could even be crucial, if I may say, in understanding Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And Srimad Bhagavad Gita is one of the foundation books uh, in order to understand the Hindu philosophy or the Hindu thought. It is one of the foundational books besides Vedanta Sutra uh, and Upanishads. So if we are able to understand Bhagavad Gita in a lucid and a very smooth way, that really helps us to understand the whole Vedic philosophy very nicely. So I think this class is going to be very crucial, is going to be very important. And the topic of this class is exploring the Gita, the philosophy, the structure, and the meaning. My desire is to do more than one class, so I have numbered this class as class 1 on this topic. So we'll take the feedback of the class at the end. If we would like to continue on the similar theme, maybe another 2 or 3 classes would suffice. So with that introduction, maybe I would like to now invite Kalyani Mataji from, I think, Ghaziabad. Mataji from Ghaziabad, UP, to kindly help me leading the Mangalacharan prayers for the devotees and for the group. Thank you very much.
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी।
हरे कृष्णा।
शुरू करो।
Yes, please.
जी प्रभु जी। हरे कृष्णा, दंडवत प्रणाम सभी को। मंगलाचरण करती हूँ। ओम अज्ञानातिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च साग्रजातं सगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् अद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा।
हरे कृष्णा। थैंक यू कल्याणी माता जी, आपने बड़ा अच्छा मंगलाचरण प्रार्थना गाई। थैंक यू वेरी मच, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू प्रभु जी फॉर गिविंग मी चांस। थैंक यू वेरी मच। हरे कृष्णा।
So we will skip this. I think most of the devotees on the call know about me, so no need for that. We'll straight away jump to the topic. Usually we will do the recap of the previous class, but we will include the recap of the previous class in our Ishopanishad classes. And I just want to spend more time on explaining this particular class. And the contents of the class today would be as follows. First of all, we will spend a little time on the purpose of the class. I gave you a little introduction already that Bhagavad Gita is the foundational pillar book for Hindu thought, or we may say Sanatan Dharma thought. And if we can understand this foundational pillar of Sanatan Dharma in a very lucid way, in a very graphic way, which can where we can relate to this book very easily, that really makes us more interested in the understanding of Sanatan Dharma, in the understanding of other Vedic books, and so on. So we will first of all spend, I think, 5-10 minutes on understanding the purpose of the class. We'll go a little more detail about it. Then we will try to understand Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita, all the 400 verses, with the help of a metaphor. And this metaphor is a metaphor of a 3-story house. हिंदी में बोलते हैं मेटाफर को रूपक. एक रूपक देकर, एक दृष्टांत देकर हम एक 3 मंजिला मकान के रूपक के साथ भगवत गीता को पूर्ण रूप से समझने का प्रयास करेंगे. So not only there is a metaphor of a 3-story house, but in the house there is a ladder also. There is a staircase also, because it's a 3-story house. So in order to connect one story from the second story to the third story, there will be a staircase, which we are calling it is that ladder. You can call it staircase also, whatever suits. And in the end, we will see how we can apply this metaphor of 3-story house and ladder to understand the various sections of Bhagavad Gita. So we will not go in a lot of detail of understanding, but we will take some sample, some example that how we can utilize this metaphor to decipher Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So let me start the discussion by first of all understanding the purpose of the class. We will spend some time, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to understand the purpose of the class. And at the same time, when I'm trying to explain you the purpose of the class, let me also share with you one of the books. I hope you can see on my screen the book which I'm displaying right now. So this class primarily I have prepared based on this particular book, which is titled as Exploring the Bhagavad Gita, its philosophy, its structure and meaning. This is written by one of the scholarly devotees in our movement, in our ISKCON movement. And Prabhu's name is Ithamar Theodore. Ithamar Theodore Prabhu is based in Israel, and his initiated name is Ishwar Krishnadas. He's a teacher, he's a professor in University of Haifa in Israel. And he has written this book, Exploring the Bhagavad Gita, its philosophy, structure and meaning, where in the very first chapter where he introduces Bhagavad Gita, he presents this metaphor of 3-story house and staircase or ladder. And in this particular chapter also, in the general introduction chapter also, he also explains the reason or the purpose why he is using this this metaphor of a 3-story house and ladder. So let us explore that in a little detail, the purpose and the incentive behind why we are doing so. So first of all, let us understand that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is a unique book. If you read Srimad Bhagavad Gita, you will notice that the kind of subject matter, the kind of philosophy, the kind of details, the kind of ethical, moral principles that have been discussed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and the details regarding God, divinity, etc., are unparalleled. Very few books, or maybe not even no other book in the world actually will have so much in-depth knowledge, so much in-depth understanding of divinity and the creation as it is presented in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So there is no doubt about it that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is a unique literary creation. However, at the same time, we also understand when we start reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we start to explore the verses in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, try to decipher the meaning out of these verses, try to decipher the connection between one verse with the another verse, connection between one chapter and another chapter, and maybe overall the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, what exactly is being told here. Sometimes we get too much caught up in the details, too much confused in the extraordinary and lot of details and explanation that has been given in this book. We many time get lost, we many time might feel confused, and so on. So the second point in this slide is deciphering the meaning and philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is not so easy. So Gita is unique, certainly, but at the same time, it is not so simple to understand. And this is something which is, I'm not saying, this is not something which are my words exactly, although I have a very similar realization when I have been reading Bhagavad Gita for almost now 15, 16 years. I have a very similar realization, but I was kind of very relieved and relaxed when I found in this particular book by Dr. Ithamar Theodore that I am not alone with that realization. Actually, some of very scholarly people in the field of religion, in the field of philosophy, and so on, they also have a very similar thought, very similar realization. And in this second slide, what I'm trying to show you here is realization of one such very scholarly person. And this person's name is Klaus Klostermaier. Mr. Klostermaier is a distinguished professor of Hinduism and religious studies emeritus in University of Manitoba in Canada. So what you see in this slide, actually I have quoted, I'm picking up from the same book which I just mentioned you in the beginning of the lecture. It is mentioned in the first chapter, where Dr. Ithamar Theodore himself makes this point that Bhagavad Gita is unique, but it is not very easy to understand. And let us see what Mr. Klaus Klostermaier or Professor Klaus Klostermaier is making a point about Bhagavad Gita. So he's saying whoever reads Bhagavad Gita for the first time will be struck by its beauty and depth. Countless Hindus know it by heart and quote it in many occasions as an expression of their faith and their insights. All over India and also in many places in the Western Hemisphere, Gita lectures attract large numbers of people. Many are convinced that the Gita is the key book for the re-spiritualization of humankind in our age. A careful study of the Gita, however, will very soon reveal the need for a key to this key book. This is very important. Will very soon reveal the need for key to this key book. Simple as the tale may seem, and popular as the work has become, it is by no means an easy book. And some of the greatest Indianists have grappled with the historical and philosophical problems it presents. So Mr. Klostermaier is making lots and lots of points in this statement. So this statement, what Klostermaier is writing, is coming from his book, which he has written, uh, and that book name is A Survey of Hinduism. So this is the picture of this scholar, Mr. Klostermaier, where he's displaying some of the ancient scripts which he had donated to some of the Hindu institutions. So he's quite old in age. I'm not sure whether he's still living or not, but I picked up his picture from the internet. So he's Mr. Klostermaier. He's making that statement. So let us decouple that statement. Let us unpack that statement with some of the important points that Mr. Klostermaier is making about Bhagavad Gita. He's saying Gita is special. Gita is really special. And he's making this point that Gita is actually beautiful and deep. 2 points. He's giving 2 adjectives to explain Bhagavad Gita. It is beautiful and it is very deep. It is no something like a shallow philosophy. It is quite deep. It requires quite some brain, quite some intellect to actually decipher the meaning of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. It addresses those questions of divinity which generally not many books in the history of the world or in the uh, literary world of books and so on actually capture those kind of details. Then he makes the second point. This book is very, very popular all over the world, not only in the Indian subcontinent, but all over the world, including the Western world and so on. And generally, it is typically known as the Indian Bible or the mainstream book of the Hindu or the Sanatan Dharma philosophy and so on. So very, very popular. And then he makes another very important point in his statement. He says, this is the key book for the re-spiritualization of humankind. So please take note what the word he's using, re-spiritualization. So like that. So what he's trying to say is that the humankind has become de-spiritualized over the ages, uh, over the last 200, 300 years. Specifically, the humankind has become de-spiritualized. And he's identifying Srimad Bhagavad Gita as one of the key book for the re-spiritualization of humankind. Next, he makes this point, and which makes the basis of this particular presentation, which we are going to do today. This is not an easy book. This is not an easy book by any standards. The philosophy contained in this book and the details contained in this book, generally it is not easy to decipher by a person without the help of maybe somebody who is already learned in the philosophy, who has been living the philosophy, who is also kind of has studied the philosophy in great details and so on. So this is not an easy book. And then in the end, he says there is a need for a key to this key book. So he is using the word key 2 times in this sentence. There is a need for a key. Key in Hindi, we call it kunji. So when I read this sentence, it reminded me of my student days. So in our student days, when we used to go to school, we would study textbooks. And most of the times, these textbooks, when we would study, we would try to understand something. It will sometimes confuse us more rather than solve the problem. And in order to solve the problem, we would almost always have to rush to the bookstore and request the seller that do you have a guide available for this textbook of standard 7? Maybe it's a book on history, it's a book on geography or whatever. We always looked for something which is known as guidebook to understand the textbook. So Gita could be considered as a textbook, but in order to understand this particular textbook, which is a key book to re-spiritualize the humankind, we need a key. We need a key. In Hindi, we call key as kunji. And I come from Uttar Pradesh. And in Uttar Pradesh, generally, if you go to the student community, they will always be talking about, do you have the kunji for this particular subject? So kunji would mean a book which actually explains the subject in a very lucid and in a very easy manner. So I was quite fond of such guidebooks or kunjis in my student days. And certainly when I found this particular kunji to understand Srimad Bhagavad Gita, I was quite enthusiastic and eager to share that with the larger audience. And probably I would use this kunji or key in the time to come to explain Srimad Bhagavad Gita or difficult philosophical points to the people who might take interest in the subject matter. So the purpose of this class, as I have mentioned in the previous slide, is to share one such key to understand this key book with the help of a metaphor. And what is that key? That key is a metaphor. And that metaphor is a 3-story house, which is very, very easy to understand the structure and the main theme of the Gita. So the metaphor of 3-story house and the house with ladders or staircase in that house, with these two important metaphors or analogies, or I would say uh, example, we will try to kind of uh, unravel the mystery or the complexity that this particular book, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, actually many times pose as an obstacle before us to actually really appreciate and dive deep into its really wonderful message that it's trying to give us. So the second section of the presentation today is the metaphor of the three-story house. So this is the heart of the presentation. The three-story house, I have shown you the picture where you can see three stories. The lowermost story, some people may call it ground floor, some people may call it first floor, then the second story, and the third story. So Bhagavad Gita explained, or I would say mapped, in the form of a three-story house. So let us see what is this three-story house has to tell us about Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Now, the metaphor of a house, you can see here a picture in the background. I have shown you a three-story house. Now, these three stories, you can call it floors, you can call it tiers, you can call it levels, whatever suits you, suits your vocabulary, call anything. This house has three stories, and each of these stories is connected with a staircase or a ladder, leading the residents of this house from one floor to another. So if you want to go from ground floor to the first floor, or I would say from first tier to the second tier, you need to take a staircase. And then if you need to move from the second tier to the third tier, you certainly need to take the staircase. So there is a concept of three stories, and there is a concept of ladder or staircase. Now, at the same time, when I'm explaining you the metaphor of a house, I would also like to relate this metaphor of a house with one of the statements that our founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada once made. And that was a very profound and a very deep statement, very affectionate statement on behalf of Srila Prabhupada. So he said that I want to build a house in which the whole world can live. I want to build a house in which the whole world can live. And through this presentation, what I would like to suggest to you is that Gita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, actually can be that house in which the whole world can live. And I will continue to elaborate on that particular theme in my maybe coming classes. If you allow me to present on the same theme for more, we will explain you more about how the whole world actually can accommodate under the philosophy, under the shelter of one book only, and that book is Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So many people, when they don't understand Bhagavad Gita properly, or the way it has to be understood, many times they think that Bhagavad Gita is actually a Hindu book, or Bhagavad Gita is an Indian book, or Bhagavad Gita is a book which is full of wisdom, but that wisdom in Srimad Bhagavad Gita is actually scattered. It does not tie together. It does not offer a coherent philosophy which actually is unifying, which actually can actually be addressed, uh, or anyone in the world can actually take benefit of that particular philosophy. So because we don't understand it in the correct way, for reasons genuine or not so genuine, whatever, uh, generally the essence and the real subject, or real the summary of Bhagavad Gita, or real the actual message of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we are always uh, trying to wonder what actually is the real message of Bhagavad Gita. So let us now learn the metaphor of this three-story house and the staircase. So you see the house is the three-story house, and the lowermost floor on this house, we label it as humanistic. this lowermost floor, which is the ground floor or the first tier, we call this house as humanistic. The second floor of this house, we term it as spiritualistic. And the third floor of this house, we call it as liberated. So I am giving some names or attaching some names or definitions, kind of small, precise and concise one word definition to each of these floors. So the bottommost floor is humanistic, the second most floor is spiritualistic, and the third floor is liberated. Now let us try to understand step by step what each of these floors actually mean to us. So this is the lowermost floor, lowest story, which is the humanistic floor. Now, this humanistic floor, which is the lowest story in the house, there is a worldview that it presents. Now, that worldview is what? That worldview is optimistic. That worldview offers a prosperous view of the world. Prosperous view of the world means that we have sufficient health, we have good health, we have sufficient prosperity. Sufficient prosperity could mean that we have a house to live in, we have sufficient money to live comfortably in this world, we have a job or an employment in this world where we can continue to live prosperously, comfortably, without any difficulty, without starving, without any other problems. Even if we become diseased, we have sufficient wealth, we have sufficient prosperity to actually deal with the disease, we become healthy and so on. And also there is morality prevailing in the society at large, so that people, when they deal with each other, they deal with each other in an honest way, in a moralistic, upright way, righteous way, and so on. So this lowest story, which is the humanistic story, actually the terms or the vocabulary that people would use in this particular story is human being. Human being is at the center of this particular story, in this particular tier, in this particular level of the three-story house. So the people who are living in that level, at this level of this house, they are mainly concerned about the human being, the welfare, the health, the prosperity, the morality. And then at a larger level, we also talk about family, a happy family life, a good family life. Uh, then from family, we talk about also about a nice society, and that society is actually following dharma. Dharma means some morality, some ethics, in order to function, in order to the society, family, and every individual to function at a proper level, in a nice level, so that the human being is based on dharma, his life is based on dharma. And when human being's life is based on dharma, the family, society automatically is based on dharmic principles and so on. So in this particular story, uh, the idea is of healthy, prosperous, and morally upright, righteous society, and so on. And the center of the discussion in this is the human being. So this is the lowest story, and I've tried to show you a picture where a society, an individual is happy, is well employed, he's healthy, he's morally right, he's honest, and so on. So that is the concept of the lowest story in this three-story metaphor that I'm presenting to you. Now let us move a little up. This is the second story, which is the spiritualistic story or spiritualistic tier, I would say, level. Now, in this particular level, in this particular tier, the people who are at this second floor of the house, they view humanistic world as limiting. They see that those people who are based on the first tier or the first level, which we just now saw, they start to see that the humanistic world is limiting. And why it is limiting? It is limiting because it has two problems. These two problems are repeated birth and death. So people on the second story or second tier are those people who view that the humanistic world is limiting, the first tier is limiting, and the problems in the first tier is repeated birth and death. Because they start to see the problems of birth and death, they start to get free, or they start to make attempts to get free from this embodied state. Embodied state means they don't primarily think themselves in terms of human being. They think themselves very differently from what people at the first tier think themselves. They think themselves or herself as eternal spirit soul. So they don't think that they are human beings. Actually, they think themselves more as eternal spirit soul and less of human being. They identify their true identity as eternal spirit soul rather than human beings. And they also think themselves that they as eternal spirit soul are different from their coverings. And these are two type of coverings. One is a gross covering, which is the body made up of these five elements: earth, air, water, fire, ether, and the subtle element, which is the mind, man, buddhi, ahankar. So these two coverings, the subtle and the gross covering, they think that this is different from myself and I am eternal spirit soul. And their main purpose is to gain hold of spiritual reality or Brahman, which could be personal reality or which could be impersonal reality. So we are not debating a lot on personal and impersonal right at this level. These particular people who are based on the second tier of the house, they think that the topmost divinity or the topmost supreme truth is either personal or impersonal. Both categories are there. But one thing is common: they don't think primarily themselves in terms of human being, which is the thought process at the first level, at the first tier. But at this particular level, they think themselves as eternal spirit soul, different from their gross bodies and the subtle bodies. And their main purpose is to uh, gain hold of spiritual reality of Brahman, which is the ultimate divinity, or uh, it could be personal or impersonal. There could be both kind of thought, or people who are thinking about Brahman either as personal or impersonal. What more? Their main aim is not to construct a prosperous and moral human society. So this is in quite contrast with the people who are living at the first tier, at the first level. People who are living at first tier, they enjoy success. They enjoy material success specifically. And what it means, material success, they become more prosperous. They have a bigger house. They earn more. They are much more healthier. They are much more fitter, and so on. But people who are living on the second story, they are not so keen about constructing a very prosperous or a very moral human society. It does not mean to say that they are not concerned about prosperity or morality at all. But the point is, their preference is now changed. The preference of people who are at the first tier is prosperity, morality, health, and so on. But people at the second story, although they appreciate the value or they appreciate the benefit of prosperity and morality in the human society, but that is not their prime motive. That is not their first goal in life. Their main aim actually now is relinquishment from this world, because they start to understand that the 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 worldview of the humanistic tier or the humanistic level actually is a worldview where we are subject to birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. So actually we are not solving our problems for good. And when we want to solve the problems for good, we want to come out from this cycle of birth and death, and we want to move to something, to some realm which is actually eternal, which is actually permanent. So These people who are living at the second story, they are more interested in relinquishing the world. They consider spiritual to be higher than the material. So spirit soul is bigger than the human being. Spirit soul is the foundation of human being. So that is how they start to view this world. They have a very different set of values compared to the first story. People at the first story, they are mainly thinking in terms of health, wealth, morality, society, family, nation, all those things. But people who are at the second story, they have a very different set of values compared to the people who are at first story. In their vocabulary, the words like equanimity towards good and bad, towards happiness and distress, towards prosperity and poverty. We should be, or one should learn equanimity. Not only equanimity towards good, bad, happiness, distress, prosperity, poverty, they also look in a way to the other living entities also. Like, for example, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in the 5th chapter, we have this verse Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmani Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Shopakecha Panditaha Samadarshina. So, this particular vision of a Pandita, this is a vision which is actually now one can map to some person who is actually located on the second story of this house which we call as Gita. In the second story, we have this person who has developed this kind of equanimity towards good and bad, happiness and distress, prosperity and poverty. And this particular equanimity, which comes from the vision that we are all spiritual, we are not material, we are spiritual. This equanimity becomes the basis for seeking the higher spiritual reality. This higher spiritual reality, I'm making it here as Sat Chit Anand. Sat means full of eternity, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. So that is the divinity that they are actually seeking, which is eternal, which is permanent. When we meet this kind of spiritual reality, we actually go to a permanent place rather than a place which is temporary, which is full of birth and death, and so on. And because of this kind of thought process, because of this kind of values which he has on the second tier of the house, people who are on the second tier of the house, such people are now attempting to realize, are attempting to release themselves from the embodied state, and they want to connect to the higher spiritual reality. So this second story or second tier, we can call it as a spiritualistic view, and also we can call it as a yogic view. Why yogic? It is yogic because there are two things which are very important for people who are living on the second tier. One is to relinquish this world, to detach themselves from this temporary world, and second is to connect themselves from a higher spiritual reality. So one is to leave this material world, and the second one is to connect with the higher spiritual reality. And this connection, this joining to the higher spiritual reality actually is known as yoga. This is the concept of yoga that comes in Srimad Bhagavad Gita many times. And there are different forms of this yoga which are mentioned in this book. So these people, they are, you can call them as yogis, who are interested in relinquishing the world and interested in connecting with the higher divine reality, which is eternal, which is full of knowledge, and which is full of bliss. Now coming to the third story. So the first story is the humanistic view. People are thinking in terms of material prosperity, where they are thinking in terms of health, wealth, morality, righteousness, dharmic, following dharmic principles, and so on. People on the second story are spiritualistic view. They are thinking in terms of leaving this world behind and actually moving towards a higher divinity and so on. So they are, the people on the second story are actually endeavoring to go to the higher spiritual reality. And once they perfect their attempt, once they perfect their actions, by which they can achieve the higher spiritual reality. Then they reach the third story. These people are liberated. And the symptoms of these people are they are self-satisfied. Like in Srimad Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic texts, you will hear this word called Atma Ram. Atma Ram means pleasure. Atma means the self. So they are pleasure seeking within the self. They don't need external stimulus to induce pleasure in them. They feel pleasure right from inside. They are infinitely blissful because they don't connect themselves with the temporary material world where you will see uh, ups and downs going like anything. Sometimes it goes up, people feel happy. Sometimes they go down, people feel bad. But since they are transcendental, they are above all those ups and downs. They are equanimity. They are situated in equanimity. They always continuously feel infinitely blissful. Their internal consciousness is beyond the senses. Like you will remember in the previous class, Ishopanishad class, I gave you the story of Sridhar Maharaj. How Sridhar Maharaj, in his final days, although he was near the deathbed, but he was very, very joyful. He was very, very blissful, cracking jokes, and uh, almost he was kind of uh, uh, he was not at all concerned about what is going on with the body and so on. What he was only concerned was that he was connected with the higher divine reality through his consciousness, through his yogic principles and so on. So these people are internal conscious. Their internal consciousness is beyond the senses. Indriya Atit, like we call it in Sanskrit. Indriya means senses. Atit means beyond the senses. So they become Indriya Atit. They are the material sense pleasures. They don't make they don't disturb such people, and they are unshaken even amidst grievous miseries. So even if they are very, very difficult situation, maybe health wise, wealth wise, or even morality wise, maybe somebody is persecuting them because of some false allegations and so on, they are unshaken. They don't bother, they don't care. So this is the mentality, uh, this is the consciousness of people who are based on the third story. So that is something which is this house called Gita. And in this Gita, we can see three different tiers. And you will now start to differentiate between the people at the first tier, the people at the second tier, and the people at the third tier. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in its 700 verses, whenever you read a verse, when you distinguish between the people of first tier, people of second tier, people of third tier, whatever verse in Srimad Bhagavad Gita you start to read, you will immediately know that this particular verse is actually talking about people from which particular tier or which particular level in this house, which is known as Gita. So I will give you in my later on in the presentation, I will give you some examples. I will demonstrate you through these verses. We will take some verses from Bhagavad Gita and we will try to read the verse and we will try to locate that verse in a particular tier, in a particular place. But before we go to that exercise, let us also understand that in this metaphor, there were two parts. One part was a three-story house, and the second part was the staircase or the ladders which are there in the house. Now, this staircase is used for what? This staircase is used to move from the first story to the second story, from the second story to the third story, like that. So how to do that? We do that through the ladder or through the staircase. And what is that staircase? Let us see. So this is the Gita's ethical ladder. And I'm trying to map this ladder with the three stories, the first tier, the second tier, and the third tier. So let us first of all see what is the first tier. What is the ladder in the first tier? So at the bottommost level is simple utilitarianism. Simple utilitarianism means what? So you remember first tier was humanistic, second tier was spiritualistic, and third tier was liberated. So at the first tier, which is humanistic level, the practitioner or the individual is interested in material gain. Either he's interested in gaining of health, he's interested in gaining of wealth, or interested in gaining some morality and some higher dharmic principles. That's all. So the purpose of this particular simple utilitarianism is that I remain prosperous, I remain healthy, I remain happy. There should not be much trouble to me in this world. This is the world. This is the only world that exists, and I have to live my life. I want to live my life in a way which doesn't give me a lot of botheration as far as materialistic point of view is concerned. So this is called simple utilitarianism. Where do we see this simple utilitarianism in Srimad Bhagavad Gita? So I have mentioned this verse 1.31, uh, uh, which you will see when Arjuna in the very first chapter is discussing with Lord Krishna about his reasons for not to fight the battle. In the 31st verse, he speaks like this. He says, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So if you pay close attention to the translation of this verse, what Arjuna is talking about here, he's talking about his own kinsmen, his family. That is the language of the people of first year: family, society, nation. Hmm? Then he says, I desire victory, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So victory here defines success. And what kind of success? Not spiritual success, it is material success. Why? Because mentioning about kingdom. So kingdom is something which is material, powerful, or a material prosperity in one's life. So we all have our own kingdoms. Somebody is a manager in a particular firm, particular company. Somebody holds a big business. Uh, somebody is a teacher in a school. So they have their own area of influence, own area of uh, command, where they can have their own influence and so on. So we have our own kingdoms in our own small or big way. And for Arjuna, it was kingdom of Hastinapur. In case of Arjuna, it was kingdom of Hastinapur. But suffice it to say that this particular verse in 1.31 is actually talking about simple utilitarianism. Only what benefits me, what helps me live this life comfortably, peacefully, prosperously, healthily, wealthily, and so on. Then comes another level. This level is called dharmic utilitarianism. Dharmic utilitarianism means what? Now the individual is also looking for prosperity through following of dharma. And what is this? This kind of uh, uh, understanding, or this kind of utilitarianism, which we in a very, I would say, Vedic terminology, we call it as karma kanda. Karma kanda means we worship certain personalities, and by worshipping those personalities, we seek a better health, more wealth, more morality, and so on, more peace in our life, Om Shanti, and so on. So that is dharmic utilitarianism. And where does this dharmic utilitarianism is mentioned? This is mentioned in 42nd and 43rd verse of Bhagavad Gita. Let me read the translation for you. Here, Lord Krishna is talking to Arjuna. He is explaining to him, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets. Resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. There is nothing more than this. So people who are located in first year and following dharmic utilitarianism, they are talking in terms of going to heaven. They are talking in terms of going to higher planets where they can enjoy more. So these people, simple utilitarianism, these people are talking of enjoying at the worldly level, at the earthly level. But the people who are talking about dharmic utilitarianism, they are a little one step above these people because they start to acknowledge higher powers other than the earthly realm. Say beyond earthly realm, there are more realms and which are governed by some higher powerful beings. And these powerful beings, if we worship, they can actually grant us prosperity. They can grant us much more health, wealth, happiness, and so on. So this is dharmic utilitarianism. And in verse number 42 and 43 of chapter 2, Lord Krishna is talking about those particular sections of the Vedas which are generally prayers for the demigods, which are generally prayers for the higher personalities of these cosmic manifestation, where by worshipping of these personalities, we can go to heavenly planets, we can get a good birth, we can get more power and sense and so on. And also we can get a opulent life and so on. And people of these kind of mentality, people of this kind of category, they say that there is nothing more than this. So they are at the dharmic utilitarianism. Still, we are talking about first year. Now comes a little more higher. So we are, as we are going higher and higher, we are actually climbing up the staircase in the house. So people are there in the first year, simple utilitarianism, dharmic utilitarianism, they are higher than the people of this category. And even higher to dharmic utilitarianism is people who are duty for its own sake. Duty for its own sake. So this was karma kanda. Dharmic utilitarianism was karma kanda, but duty for its own sake, this is known as nishkam karma. Please pay attention to my words kindly. Duty for its own sake means nishkam karma. And this nishkam karma, duty for its own sake, where is it mentioned in Bhagavad Gita? It is mentioned in verse number 47 of chapter 2, which says a very popular verse, very famous verse, which is Karmanyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Ma karma phal heturbhu ma te sango stva karmani. Where Lord Krishna is now encouraging, is inspiring Arjuna to fight the war on the call of duty. You are a Kshatriya, you are a soldier. How can you leave the battle like this? You need to fight this war because you are a soldier and the duty of the soldier is to fight the war. Don't think about the results because the results are not in your control. That's what the duty for its own sake, that particular ladder or that particular rung in that ladder or that particular step in the staircase actually mean. So you can see here how people from simple utilitarianism can move up to dharmic utilitarianism, where they are acknowledging higher beings, and even above that is duty for its own sake, where the person is now nishkam karma. Nishkam karma means he is not expecting results for himself. He is simply performing the duty just because the duty is supposed to be performed. So he's duty bound, he's selfless, and so on. So at this level, he's still on the first tier. He's still not thinking about divinity. He's still not thinking about higher reality. Still thinking in terms of humanistic way, humanistic viewpoint. These are the people of first tier. Now, coming to the people of second tier. So we understood from our previous slides that people who are on the second tier are interested in what? They are interested in two things. One is to relinquish the world because it's a place of birth and death, repeated birth and death, and they want to go to a permanent place, which is a place permanent, eternal, divine, full of bliss, full of knowledge, and so on. And in the second tier now, when the staircase is moving slowly up, 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 now after duty for its own sake comes the next stage. From Nishkam Karma comes the stage of Nishkam Karma Yoga. Now I'm adding the word yoga. Why I am adding the word yoga? Because at this particular stage, the person is now interested in moving out from this material world. So that is the difference between the person at offering fruits to the Supreme and duty for its own sakes. From Nishkam Karma to Nishkam Karma Yoga. And offering fruits to the Supreme, where does it mention? In Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned in 3rd chapter, 30th verse. So let me read that particular verse for you. I will read the translation, not the Sanskrit. So that translation is, therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desire for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Now you can see here, without desire for profit, without desire for profit means duty for its own sake. Nishkam karma is there. With no claims to proprietorship and free from lethargy, no claims to proprietorship, again Nishkam karma, there is no benefit for me. And then in the first line, what Lord says, therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me. So here is the yoga. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Bhagavan. So the Bhagavan is saying to Arjuna that do this duty for me. Do this duty and surrender the results of your work to me. So this is the next level. So once this person at a Nishkam Karma level start to identify the higher reality, the higher divinity, and start to offer the fruits of his work to the supreme reality, then now it has started to take the shape of yoga. It has started to take shape of connection to the divinity. And now this person has moved from the first floor of the house to the second floor of the house, where now he is interested in yoga. He is interested in connecting with the supreme. At this particular stage, it may be possible that he doesn't know who that supreme is. So from Bhagavad Gita, from the study of Bhagavad Gita, we ultimately know that supreme is Lord Krishna. But it may be possible that this particular person may not exactly know that supreme divinity is Lord Krishna. He considers something as supreme divinity. He may consider impersonal Brahman as the supreme divinity, or he may consider some personalistic understanding of that divinity also as supreme. But he is now interested in connecting with that supreme, and he started to make that offering of fruits to that supreme. So this particular individual has now transcended, has now crossed over the first tier and is now located in the second tier. Then comes even higher. Now this particular person, when he wants to go even higher, now he starts to understand and he starts to identify that divinity. He starts to uh, uh, he starts to offer the fruits not only after he completes the action, rather he does all the activity in the mood of a yogi. What is the difference between the fourth step of the staircase and the fifth step? So the fifth step here is turning ethical action into yoga, and the fourth step is offering fruits to the supreme. So what is the difference? When a person does some work, after he completes the work, then he gets a result, and that result he offers to the supreme. So he remembers the supreme only when he has completed the activity, he has got the result, and then when he has got the result, then he remembers of the supreme and he offers the result to the supreme. But a higher level is somebody who, while doing the activity only, is actually remembering the supreme. So here, for example, if I am doing some cooking, so while cooking, I am not remembering the supreme. When my food is prepared, then when my food is prepared, actually I want to offer it to the Supreme, then only I'm remembering the Supreme. So this is something like a fourth level. But at the fifth level, when I'm cooking the food, then at that same time only I'm actually remembering the Supreme. I'm in the consciousness of Supreme. I'm thinking all the while that I'm cooking this food for the Supreme. I'm cooking this food for the Supreme, like that. But at the fourth level, I may not think like that while I'm doing that activity. So here the remembrance comes after the action is complete. But here the remembrance is continuously there, or at least the attempt to remember the Lord is there, or uh, 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 an endeavor to remember the Lord is there while doing the action also. And where is it mentioned in the Gita? This is mentioned in the 9th chapter, 27th verse. So the 9th chapter, 27th verse says what? It says, Yat karoshi yadashnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurush madarpanam. What Lord Krishna is saying? Lord Krishna is saying, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So this is something which is at a higher level. Here, the level of devotion or the consciousness of devotion or the consciousness of doing something for the Supreme is right there at the word go, right there at the word go when we start our action and so on. So turn ethical action into yoga. That is the fifth level. Now at the third tier, after the person is practicing all these two activities on the second tier, he's making an attempt all the while he's making that yoga practice. He's a yogi. He's making that practice of yoga all the time. And by practicing that yoga, he continues to purify himself more and more and more. He is able to uplift himself more and more and more. And when he's able to uplift more and more, he reaches to a point when he gets unalloyed, spontaneous, and pure devotion for the Lord. When there is nothing else matters, only matters is the happiness of the Lord. That's all what matters. And where does it mention in the Gita? It is in the 22nd verse of the 9th chapter where the Lord says, Ananyaschintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nitya bhuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Here what the Lord is saying, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So this is where Lord Krishna is not talking about Ananyas Chintayanto Mam. Ananya, no other. Only focused on me. Ananyas Chintayanto Mam. Here the Lord Krishna is saying, Ye Janaha Paryupasate, those who do like that, Tesham Nitya Abhiyuktanam. They are Nitya Abhiyukta, they are Nitya Yukta. They are always connected and meditating on my transcendental form. And what do I do for them? He says, Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So this is the third tier, dear devotees, where the practitioner is now unalloyed. He doesn't think anything else. Ananyas Chintayan. Spontaneous. Spontaneous means like the love of a mother for a child. The love of a mother for a child is spontaneous. The mother does not have to force herself to love the child. That kind of love this particular person now experiences towards the divinity, towards the Lord. And that is where, which is the third tier. So now with this particular Gita's ethical ladder, we will now try to apply this metaphor to decipher the Gita, and we will look at various other verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and where we will try to kind of locate or map those particular verses from Bhagavad Gita to a particular tier and to a particular staircase on the ladder. And let me start first of all for those verses which are located on the first tier. And here I will take help of some of the verses which are mentioned in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. These verses are starting from number 31. So I will quickly read the translation and then we will try to locate this particular verse in a particular tier. Actually, I've already done it for you, but just to give you a little more confidence so that you also agree with me. Now, in the 31st verse, what is being said by Lord Krishna is, considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. So there is no need for hesitation. Hmm? So it is only simply talking about there is it is talking about following the duty. It is talking about there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. So there is no need for hesitation. So as a specific duty of a Kshatriya, you should know there is no better engagement for you than fighting. So this is something like you can call it as first year. There is nothing about going to the higher planets, heavens, and there is not talking about any nishkam karma or there is not talking about any selfless, dutiful work here. It is talking about that as a Kshatriya, you should fight. Then the next one is 32nd verse. So 32nd verse is, O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. So again, this is first year where it is talking about humanistic. You will gain some prosperity, you will gain some benefit. And what is the benefit being talked about here is it will open the doors of heaven for you. So going to the heaven. So it is talking about not only at this worldly level, it is talking about the other worldly level also, the level of heavens. And this is talking about first year and dharmic utilitarianism. Similarly, there are 4 verses from 33 to 36. I will read one of the verses, maybe we'll take 34th verse. Here, Lord Krishna is saying, people will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. Hmm? Now he's talking about first year simple utilitarianism, infamy, respect, dishonor, and all that. So neither he's talking about duty, is neither he's talking about heavens. He's talking about some benefits in terms of respect, in terms of fame, in terms of honor, etc. And that is why we can classify these 4 verses here. First year, simple utilitarianism. Then we come to the 37th verse. 37th verse is, O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. So it is talking about earth and heavens. So it is first year, and simple utilitarianism and dharmic utilitarianism both are being talked in the 37th verse. Now let us look at the 38th verse. So the 38th verse come immediately after the 37th verse, but it is now raising Arjuna to a higher level. What it is saying at the 30th verse, it is saying, Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva nayanam papam avapsyasi. What he's saying, do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing, you shall never incur sin. You shall never incur sin. So it is still not talking about connection. It is not talking about yoga. It is talking about sin. It is talking about duty for the sake of duty. So it has raised Arjuna from the first year, first staircase to the first year, second staircase. So first year and duty for its own sake. Then in 239 and 240, Lord Krishna is now talking about second tier. So what Lord Krishna is talking about here in 39th verse, he's saying, thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of work, from the bondage. Now he's talking about bondage of work. Now where does the bondage comes? The concept of bondage comes in the second tier. So we were talking about in the second tier 2 characteristics, that we want to get rid of this material world, and we want to connect with the higher world, higher divinity. So there is a bondage with this material world which we want to just get off. And it is not talking about connection, but it is talking about getting rid of the bondage. So it's already talking about yoga in an indirect sense. So the 39th verse falls in the category of second tier, free oneself from karma bandhana. And now in the 40th verse, it is also in the second tier, which is talking about neha bhikramo nasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So Lord Krishna is talking about, in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. In the previous verse he's talking about karma bandhana, and in the next verse he's talking about you will be freed from the most dangerous type of fear. And what is the most dangerous type of fear? That most dangerous type of fear is falling once again into the cycle of birth and death, falling again into the cycle of birth and death. So the 39th and the 40th verse both are talking about moving to the path of yoga, or moving to that path which will take you, or which will free you from the bondage, which will free you from the cycle of birth and death. So 39 and 40, it is of second tier. Like you can see in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, if you understand this model, the model of three-story house and the model of this ethical ladder, both together, then you will know where exactly in that house of Gita that particular verse is actually located. That verse is actually can be mapped. And so you will be able to grasp Srimad Bhagavad Gita at from any point you start to read. You will understand this particular verse is actually talking about third tier or second tier or first tier. Either it is talking about only in humanistic terms, or it is talking about in yogic terms, in spiritualistic terms, or it is talking about in liberated terms. People who have followed yoga process are now liberated. So these are the three categories of mentalities, consciousness that is being mentioned in Bhagavad Gita from verse number 1 till verse number 700. And if you get grasp of these concepts, the whole Bhagavad Gita becomes very easy and accessible to you when you start to read them. Now, let us take one more example. So we have discussed this particular example of Manav Seva and Madhav Seva in our previous classes. Now, after understanding this particular concept of three tiers and the staircase, we can very easily understand what is Manav Seva. Manav Seva is actually talking about the first tier. The Manav Seva is, what is Manav Seva? Manav Seva means giving people some material benefit, either in terms of taking care of their bodies, maybe giving them good food, good clothing, maybe good medicine, maybe shelter in form of a house, and so on. So that is Manav Seva. So Manav Seva is something like at the level of first tier, where we are interested in the welfare of the material welfare of the other living entities living together with us on that particular level. And Madhav Seva is actually something where the person is now trying to become a yogi. Although Madhav Seva does not mean that he is denying Manav Seva, but he understands that Manav Seva has its own limitations. But Madhav Seva can actually lead this particular person out from this utilitarian world which is at the first level, humanistic view, cycle of birth and death. So Madhav Seva, or this yogic process where the person is interested in connected with the higher divinity, it can actually take the person from first tier to the second tier, and from second tier to even third tier. So that Manav Seva, Madhav Seva context we can understand. So we can understand that these two people who are Manav Seva enthusiasts and people who are Madhav Seva enthusiasts, their language don't match. They talk in different terms, and when they talk in different terms, there's a conflict. However, in the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, both these people are accommodated, as we just now saw through the examples of various verses. I will also take this opportunity to relate this particular model with another Vedic book that we are studying right now. And this book is Sri Ishopanishad. And Sri Ishopanishad, we are recently completed our study of 6 verses, which is mantra 9 till mantra 14. And in mantra 9 and mantra 14, we studied 4 terms. One is Vidya, second is Avidya, then Sambhuti and Asambhuti. So Vidya means that knowledge which take us to the divinity, which take us away from this cycle of birth and death. So this Vidya is actually is located in the second tier. Similarly, Avidya. Avidya means something, that knowledge which actually keeps on bonded or keeps on bound, ourselves bound to the earthly level, to the humanistic level. And so Avidya is actually at the first tier. Similarly, we saw Sambhuti and Asambhuti. Sambhuti means something which has independent existence. Independent existence. So there is only one person who can say who is independently existing, and that is Lord Krishna. Because everything comes from Lord Krishna. No one else can say that he is independent because his existence depends upon Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna is the Sambhuti, and people of that particular level, you can call it, actually belongs to the second tier. You can probably add also the third tier here. And Asambhuti, these are the people who are belonging to the first tier. So like that, with this philosophy, with this metaphor of 3-story house and the staircase, that staircase is now being defined in terms of very secular words. These are not words uh, which are concepts actually, which applies to everyone or anyone in this world. People could fall, uh, even if they are following other religions, practicing other religions. You can label them, you can map them according to the tiers and according to the staircase in the house. So like that, this model of 3-story house and the staircase becomes a very easy model to refer, where we can understand all the Vedic literature in a very lucid way, in a very coherent way, and it immediately gives us a mapping in our mind that this particular verse is actually talking about what level of spiritual wisdom in a particular book. And you can even use this model to map the teachings of other religions of the world, be it Christianity, be it Islam, Sikhism, Judaism, whatever. Once you have a little understanding of that, uh, the philosophy of the uh, uh, that other world religions offer, you can actually map that philosophy to this model of uh, uh, the 3-story house and the staircase. So the point which I'm trying to make here is that Bhagavad Gita is that one book which has space for accommodating every other philosophy in the world. And this book actually could be used as a unifying book under which, in this house, people of followers of various philosophies, various mindsets, various opinions, they can also come and take shelter in this particular house, because this book actually offers something for everyone. Everyone can connect with this book in some way or the other. So with that particular message, I would like to thank you very much for your very patient hearing, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Any questions, comments, and takeaways, I will be looking forward to you now. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
What a simple way. What a simple way, Guruji. Really, you brought out to all of us, especially I know about myself, out a lot of questions, lot of queries. You made life so simple. You made things so look simple. And really, really, thanks a million to you. Please keep it up.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. So thank you to Ithamar Theodore Prabhuji, Ishwar Krishna Prabhu, who wrote this book, who came up with this idea and philosophy of 3-story house. So we thank to Ithamar Prabhu also. So thank you, Prabhuji. Thanks for your very candid and very wonderful feedback. Thank you very much.
I might not have known those names minus you. So it's through you only
Sure,
I
sure,
could
sure.
know these
Yeah.
names.
Certainly.
Thanks.
You are feeling gratitude towards me. I'm feeling gratitude towards Ishwar Prabhu. Thank you. Yeah.
Hare Krishna,
you.
Prabhuji.
Yes, Ishwar Prabhuji. Yes. Any feedbacks?
It's really very crystallizing. Yes, Karta is very much right. Things are pretty clear now, and the roadmap looks pretty clear. All that haze that was very often seen seems to have become less. Definitely, of course, I again say that, and the author also says that Gita is not that simple, and we cannot take things granted.
Correct.
But certainly there is a way out.
Hmm.
There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and probably we are well. Of course, we are on the first year, no doubt about it, making attempts to somehow go to the second one. But one thing I wish to add that 2 days back, I completed 75 years, and in the last phase, I would say at the last leg of the run of my life. So can you suggest something for people like us who are advanced in age, just as we have lifts in the building to reach quickly instead of stairs? So some crisp,
yeah.
some summary or short listing of things for people of my age, if at any stage you feel you can help us, will be really, I will be grateful for that. Thank you so much once again for such nice talk.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. And in response to the answer, your answer to the question that you have asked. So the answer actually is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So what happens in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are Sud Goswami actually request. Okay. Yeah. So the answer is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sud Goswami is addressing the lot of rishis that have accumulated and gathered in the forest of Naimisharanya. And these saints and sages are actually coming from various inclinations. Some are karma yogis, some are dhyana yogis, some are, you can say, gyan yogis, and so on. So they are coming from various different type of inclinations. And in that particular meeting, in that particular assembly, a question is asked, what is the topmost dharma? And Sud Goswami replies in a very succinct verse, which says that parodharma is actually bhakti. So after responding to that question, he continued to answer and continue to elaborate on that question, where he's saying that whatever background, whatever affiliation anybody is coming from, the only way to come out from this material world, from this world of samsara, from this birth and death, is actually bhakti yoga. And for those particular people who are assembled there, he mentioned actually one verse, which I may not remember exactly, but I may like to repeat that in partial memory, which is akam sarva kamo va moksha kam udharadhi tivrena bhakti yogena brajet, something like that in the fourth line. So what does this verse is saying is akam sarva kamo va moksha kam udaradhi. Akam means you may have no desire. Sarva kam means you may have lot of desires. And then moksha kam udaradhi. Moksha kam means you may have desire for liberation. So all three categories have come. No desire, desire for liberation, and desire for a lot of enjoyment. But how you can actually make amends to all these people? Tivrena bhakti yogena. Tivrena bhakti yogena. Tivrena bhakti yogena means very dedicated practice of devotional service. You can actually make the make the best out of a bad bargain, or whatever lost time we have. So you may think that you are starting this maybe at the age of 74 or 75. Even I started maybe something at the age of maybe 24, 25, 30, whatever you may call it. But the point is, once we start this, like I just read this verse 240, Neha bhi kramo nasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So even a small progress on this path of yoga, on this path of bhakti yoga, can
Right.
actually save us from the greatest danger. So I would request that if you are seriously interested in this yogic process, then you should be willing to take up this practice which we are advising in our classes generally, which is ABCD. ABCD means association,
Right.
B means books, C means chanting, and D means
Yes.
diet. So start chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as part of your maybe daily sadhana. Maybe start with 1 round, 2 rounds, and so on. And try to read Bhagavad Gita, try to associate with devotees, try to understand, and maybe offer whatever food you are eating to the Lord. So then it all becomes yoga. Now you are trying
Right.
to do yoga and you are trying to connect with the higher
Right.
divinity. So you are moved from first tier to the second tier. By doing this process, you have now moved from first tier to the second tier. And then leave it to the
Right.
Lord. Leave it to the Lord, because the ultimate result actually comes by when the Lord becomes merciful on the practitioner. So in our hands is only the endeavor, and the result is in the hands of the Lord. So once we have started the endeavor, we are on a safe track, we are on a safe course. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's some kind of fast pacing also can be added to it, becoming more regular and saying things more regularly, more devotedly.
Certainly.
You can
Certainly.
add quality to what you are doing. I
Correct.
think that may be a some help.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Certainly.
Prabhu, thank you, Prabhu. Very nice, very clear, Prabhu's clarity.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
This class
Yes.
is really very much interesting class, Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you.
Prabhuji. Yeah. So I would also like to invite Prakash Babuji, because he's, I think, joining us for the first time in this arrangement. So any comments, Prabhuji, from your side?
Thank you very much. I have given my comments saying
Oh,
that
okay.
it's an excellent presentation, good analogy. Keep the progress.
Okay.
I'll definitely attend again. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really encouraging. Thanks. Okay. Any other questions or doubts? Anupama Mataji, you like to say something? You were joyful like a child when the quiz got cancelled. So are you more joyful now?
Yes, Prabhuji. That was, of course, in a lighter vein, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So now you are more joyful after learning this analogy or metaphor?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But Prabhuji, is it better to learn the shlokas also, or just know the meanings?
Yeah. Certainly we encourage devotees to recite the shlokas, by heart the shlokas, or memorize the shlokas. That is certainly very purifying, and it also deepens sometimes a lot of realization when we speak the shloka, reading the meaning, understanding the meaning. It sometimes become very, very enriching in our journey towards spirituality. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
4.
Okay. Any other comment or question or takeaways? Okay. If there is no questions, no other comments, I would like to bring this class to a rest. So from the next week, we will not have a class on Saturday, as I'm traveling on Saturday. So I will try to organize a class on Sunday, and we'll send you a notification regarding that class. And on Sunday, we will have the quiz for our Sri Ishopanishad. And if you think you found this presentation nice, useful, you want to continue with this discussion a little more, maybe 1 or 2 sessions more, maybe we can add a more understanding to all that what we discussed today in our subsequent meetings. So let me know your feedback. I will issue the feedback form after this class on the WhatsApp. Thank you very much.
Prabhuji,
Yes, Prabhu.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Who is this? Praveen ji?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So many,
Yes,
many
Praveen ji.
thanks, and I'm blessed. That's it. That's
Okay.
it. That's all question, all answer to my questions, sir.
Okay.
That is answer to my all questions, sir. I'm
Okay.
blessed. I'm pleased. I'm traveling to the next world now.
Okay.
More than enough for me, sir. My Prabhuji blessed and keep blessing me, sir.
Okay,
That's many,
Prabhuji.
many, sir.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
And
Thank you very much.
I'm at this age, and I'm blessed with such knowledgeable leaders, Guruji, who can guide me to the next destinations. This is my greatness that I got. This is very high valuable person to me, sir.
Thank you
And
very much, Prabhuji.
I don't
Thank
have
you.
I don't have any words to anymore.
I'm appreciative of you. Actually, I was also spellbound like that when I read that understanding and explanation of Bhagavad Gita. And certainly I will convey my prayers to Ithamar Theodore Prabhu, Ishwar Krishna Prabhu, that he, such a nice way, he explained such a complicated and a complex philosophy to us in a very simple way. So thank you very much. Okay.
Only my words is this is my fate that I got leading such person to my life to the next destination, sir.
My
I'll
pleasure,
be very
sir.
smooth, very smooth, very smooth, very smooth. Many,
you.
many thanks to you, sir. Many, many thanks to you, sir.
Thank you, Prabhu. I'm also really grateful that I was able to serve everyone in some humble way. Thank you very much. Yes.
Prabhuji,
Yes.
one comment.
Yes, Prabhu.
So beyond the 9th chapter, is there a mapping available in the book, or
No, we can map it
corresponding to the-
ourselves. We can, I have this mapping I created myself today only. I did not picked it up from somewhere. So we can do that mapping when we are studying Bhagavad Gita, when we are studying Ishopanishad. You keep this model in your memory. You kind of understand it little more deeply. What we just discussed, probably you already have understood it. It is simple. So when we study these Gita in the future, or Sri Ishopanishad or other books in the future, we will certainly bring out this model once again and try to map that particular verse in the model somewhere. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks,
Yes.
Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jivan Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, thank you very much.
Any
And-
chance I can take 1 minute?
Yes, Prabhuji, please.
With your permission, and
Yes,
with
Prabhuji, yes.
all Satsang's permission. My personal experience is sharing is the best way. Whatever we learn in the class, we should share with somebody. And I normally share with most of my patients in their language.
Oh.
I speak few languages, so
Okay.
this helps me and my patients a lot.
Okay.
And my results are, they, as the patients say, they are far superior than other my colleagues of my age.
Okay.
So I'm so much thankful to you for this.
Yeah.
Must only carry home message for my other Satsangi colleagues. They should share with the other people whichever they can. And the best, if nobody they find, is their own children. And
Yeah.
it will be the best way to imbibe something at least name Gita to the children. And then